Good evening, good afternoon. It's Saturday, July 12th, 2025, 6 p.m. here, Central Standard Time in Champaign, Illinois. You're watching Call for Two. You're joining me today for a playthrough of Detective, a modern crime board game, Season 1. This is an odd little game. We have some experience with it and its big brother. I'll be talking about that in a minute, but let me check in with the chat first, see how everyone is doing. Looks like we've got our usual suspects here. This is an unusual time for me, but my sleep schedule does get messed up occasionally. We went for a 4.5-hour bike ride this morning, and all that bright sun has scrambled my nighttime sleep schedule. So I thought, well, why not? Let's just do a live stream. I'm caught up in my programming, so I've got some time. I've been sort of itching to return to this game. So let's talk a little bit about our history with Detective, a modern crime board game. The original Detective Modern Crime board game came out in 2018, I believe, and was sort of a hit. And then this game came out a couple years later, 2020. There have been several spin-offs of the original Detective game. This was one of them, a sort of simplified rule set for Detective. I forget what Detective Modern Crime board game won some major award, and it got lots of press. And so they've branched off. They made Vienna Connection, which is my favorite, a sort of spy story. But they also made Dune House Secrets, which I really panned, did a long review of, discussing all the ways it was a step backward. Then they made this, Detective Season 1. They made a couple small box expansions. One was for pets, and one was a Los Angeles one, I think, done by Rob Daviau, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, I did play it, LA Crimes, but I don't remember if it was Rob Daviau that did it. And then they made a Batman Everybody Lies. I think that was the most recent one, sort of detective system with Batman, who's a comic book detective. Now, Portal Games is really one man's vision, Ignacy Trzewiczek, and I really, as the years go by, the running of that company and the decisions are more and more confusing to me. But Dune House Secrets came out as the first of a trilogy, and then they've just gone completely radio silent for years about whether there's ever going to be set 2 or 3 of the trilogy. I don't think there is. I think probably it cost them to license that game. They didn't make any money, and they just dropped it, which is fine by me because it was a pretty bad game. But it's just odd that they don't, it's one of the few companies where the main guy who's doing it is one guy. He's running it. He's making all the decisions. He's got a video blog where he's on every week talking, and yet somehow they managed to not communicate about their plans. I don't get it. Now, the original Detective Modern Crime board game, which you can sort of see sneaking in the corner there, was a, controversial is not the right word, a divisive game. Some people loved it and some people really hated it. Now, I was in the group that loved it. I played it actually over Zoom during COVID, and it was well suited for that. It was a connected set of cases, making it a long-form multi-part game. And you know that those are my favorite. The longer, the better. And there are a couple of hallmarks of the mechanics in that game that were interesting. They didn't always work. And in fact, the people that hated it had some good reasons. The people who didn't like it had some good reasons. One was it felt like you only see a small number of the small proportion of the cards. It's all card-based, except for some internet components. And so you could get unlucky and then not see enough to make a decision. It does seem like the authors decided that in terms of difficulty, they were going to try to make cases that when you got to the end, you really didn't quite have enough to be confident about your decision. That's just the way, where they landed on the difficulty. And then the original Detective Modern Crime board game had a whole bunch of skill tokens. They're asymmetric player powers for the different characters and a certain number of different tokens. And you'd get a card, and if you wanted to follow up on something, you would have to spend certain tokens. If you didn't have those tokens, you couldn't follow up on it. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I don't think it's a great design decision, but from my perspective, everything being considered, it was a very enjoyable game. The other major part of the system is an online database where you could look up things like fingerprints and DNA results and interviews. And that was where the modern part of a modern crime board game came from. Now, this spin-off simplified things a bit. It still uses the online database stuff. In this box are 3 cases. It still uses the online database. Where they simplified my memory, now it has been 4 or 5 years since we played the first case in this box. But my memory is that the main simplification has to do with the skill tokens. In this box, there's no asymmetry in player powers, and there's only one kind of skill token. It's really not that much of a simplification. In the original, there were also occasionally documents that you could read. There's none of that. This is pure small card system, very much in the genre of Suspects. One of the commonalities with both Detective Modern Crime and this small box and the other spin-offs is the idea that you have a strict time limit. When you run out of time, you must try to solve it, but that you're also moving between locations. And it uses a mechanic we've seen in a bunch of other mystery games where if you want to do another action at a place you already are, it won't take you, you don't have to travel. And so it's more efficient. So there's a little bit of an efficiency mini game here where you're trying to think, well, if we go here now, it's going to cost us an extra hour. And you really do have some severe limits of time. So this is a new mechanic, and the resource tokens are a new mechanic. You've got a collection of pictures of the different suspects that don't really serve any role. Same thing here, where these are different players. If you play with 3 players, you would pick 3 of these. Each player would get one. What do they do? What effect do they have? 0. This card does nothing. These little tokens do nothing. They have no purpose whatsoever. There's no storyline with them. There's just nothing. There's no abilities. You don't even flip this over if something goes wrong. So it's just to have something else to put in the box. You can see there are 3 cases. And there's our car for moving around and our generic tokens. And the token that's used to track time. I don't know what these are for. I can't remember. But we'll get these out. Now, there's something particularly unusual, however, about the case we're playing today, which is Blood, Ink, and Tears. We're going to read our little introduction to this. We can pick which character we're going to be, but it doesn't do anything. I think we'll pick Mariana. Now, what's unusual about the case? So the rules say, it's been a while since we played this. We played case 1 in 2021, so 4 years ago. And as I remember it, it was not easy to solve. I don't remember how well we did, but I did enjoy it a bit. And here we are playing the second of the 3 cases. There are some interesting mechanics on cards. Sometimes you have to make a decision right away about whether to follow up on something and spend some resources. Which is another sort of unique mechanic to detective, which is interesting. But here is the very odd part. 3 cases in this box. I've told you about the unique features of this game compared to something like Suspects. And that is these mechanics of traveling around and spending tokens. But now let me read you what it says about the case we're playing today. It says, here's the special rules. You will not be moving between locations. You will not be using tokens. So, but there is a little bit of online nature. Okay, so there you have it. No locations, no driving around, but we will start out with 14 turns. So this is feels like a much more standard case. Standard small box mystery case. So let's talk for a little bit and then we'll read the introduction and get started. I do have in addition to just feeling like I have an urge to return to this game, I do have an ulterior motive for playing this, which is I'm planning on recording a video of games that need more content. And so I want to refresh myself about Detective. All right, let me check in with the chat. The first game is on sale from $50 to $30. Yeah, that still seems a little high. It certainly would be high for this. If you could get this on sale for under 20, I think I'd probably recommend it. Maybe the original one for 30 would be okay. Let me do a little bit more bookkeeping here before we get started. Tomorrow, Sunday at 1 p.m. is our normal play-by-mail slot, but we won't be doing our normal Dear Holmes play-by-mail. That's because I'm going to Gen Con at the end of the month, which would interfere with our 4-part schedule. So instead, I've scheduled for tomorrow a much longer game. We're going to play the third and final of the currently released games in the series, in the Masters of Crime series. We'll be playing Masters of Crime Rapture tomorrow at 1 p.m. There are 2 more boxes that are in the works and are being translated into English that we'll get to eventually. The other thing I wanted to remind people is that I will be at Gen Con at the end of the month. If you are going to Gen Con and you see me walking by, just beeline right over to me and say hello, assuming you are a viewer of this channel. Don't just come up and say, I saw one video, I don't like your channel, but hello. But if you're a viewer of this channel and you see me at Gen Con, please do come say hello. All right. Let's read our introduction here. Dig Deeper was written by Rob Daviau. All right, here's our introduction. This introduction has 2 pages. All the rest have just 1. This is an odd case. All these cases, I think, were written by different people. Okay, October 11, 2019, somewhere in Great Britain. The walls of the venerable residence creak with every strong gust of wind. Initially, an official dinner in this antique mansion seemed promising, but the social atmosphere is so stifling, you'd rather be anywhere else. You've already managed to use the wrong cutlery at least 3 times and nearly spilled your wine on the snow-white tablecloth. You wouldn't be here if your boss had been able to attend. Unfortunately, your host has deemed you a worthy substitute. Ben Hampton was a good friend of the former chief constable of your police force. Since the latter's death, he's invited a representative of the force to one of his parties every year. It would have been a shame to miss a year, even if it meant a several-hour drive for you to get there. The manor house is completely isolated, surrounded by dense forests and swampland. If that weren't enough, the raging storm has closed the roads leading away from the estate, so no guests can leave before morning. At least there's free food. After a countless number of courses and desserts, the household staff informs you it's time for the highlight of the evening. You're escorted to the study where Ben Hampton, a passionate historian, is preparing to read from a selection of old family documents. How wonderful. Hampton is a man in his 70s, but he still enjoys good health and appears to be the most lively person in the room. When he stands up, all conversations cease. He removes a key from his pocket, leaves for a few minutes, then comes back holding a large, time-worn envelope. He raises it so that all gathered may see. We gather here, as we do every year, on the anniversary of my father's death, who, like his father before him, wanted the history of our family to be remembered, he says, pausing briefly to allow the wan applause to die off. Let us, therefore, remember the glory days of this old manor. Some guests yawn furtively. Your boss warned you that this evening would not be entertaining. Every year, Ben Hampton presents historic family documents from his archives, which are of no interest to anyone but himself. A deed of ownership from the year 1834, written by Albert Hampton. He licks his finger and turns the page. Conservator Maureen Doomstick, a woman in her 40s, makes a sound just short of a gasp, seeing such careless handling of a historical artifact. In the name of, he says, loosening the collar of his shirt. Please excuse me. In the name of... The documents slip from his hands and fall slowly to the expensive Persian rug. Oh, good heavens, Ben, cries Beatrice Hampton, his wife, as she rushes towards him. Hampton falls heavily to the floor, clearly suffocating, his bulging, unseeing eyes staring up towards the ceiling. The butler rushes to the phone to call an ambulance. A man you know to be the head of Hampton's personal security detail appears at the door, looking as if he had just awoken from a nap. Ben's son, John Hampton, seems to be the only person in the room who hasn't lost their composure. Maureen Doomstick, the only person besides yourself who isn't part of the household, sits motionless, her hand covering her mouth. They indeed they are. Cursed, Ben sputters, clutching the envelope in his hand. Ben, this is hardly the time for humor, cries Beatrice, shaking his arm. You try to provide emergency assistance to your host, but everything happens so quickly that before you're out of your chair, Hampton coughs a final time and slumps over. There's a moment of stony silence, broken only by Beatrice's quiet sobs. Everyone is frozen in shock, staring at Ben's dead body, hoping that this dramatic display is simply a joke in poor taste to enliven the evening. Finally, Beatrice's sister Angelina speaks. It's not possible, she says, her voice trembling. Don't touch the documents or his hands. Angelina's right, John says. Curse or no curse, it would be better not to get too close to those papers. He kicks the documents away from his father's body. A few pages end up in the lit fireplace. You and Mrs. Doomstick back out to the corridor. You want to give the family their privacy, but before you leave, you put on a latex glove and retrieve the library key from Ben Hampton's pocket. It seems that your short holiday is over. You try to use your phone, but you're unable to get a signal. You sigh and take your notebook out of your pocket. Your instinct and common sense suggest to you that something is terribly wrong here. Did someone want Ben Hampton dead? And if so, why? So he seems to have been poisoned by these documents. He licked it. He licked his finger, licked the envelope or whatever, got some sort of poisoning. He was reading the deed of ownership from 1834, written by Albert Hampton, his father, I guess, or some ancestor. And then the son looks at it and he says, they're cursed. Is he confirming something he's read? Has he read something saying it's cursed? And now he's saying, yes, they're right, it was cursed. And then Angelina seems to have deduced that there was some poisoning. And then something very fishy happens. John kicks the documents away from the body, and some go in the fireplace. All right, let's see what our setup here. Determine whether Ben Hampton was murdered. If so, by whom, and what was the motive? We're not going to be traveling, so it's going to be, we're just in this room interviewing people. It feels very much like a classic Agatha Christie mystery, which is exactly what the Suspects game does. However, starting at time 14, take the portraits deck for chapter 2, face down, take portrait number 10. That looks like the guy who just keeled over Ben. Okay, we'll put that on the table. We've got some initial leads that we can visit, but before we do, we're told to read files 200 on the online site. No, let's see, I hadn't actually. Let's see if we can get in here. Okay, so there we are at the Antares database, and I've already told it what case we're playing. Oh boy, I didn't like that. Oh, okay. Blood, ink, and tears. Okay, here we go. All right, so the way this database, the way this website works with the game, let's see if we can't. So we're using the website. I think maybe I would need my. Trying to remember how to go full site on this browser without the keyboard. All right, doesn't matter. So the way the website works is you've got this database page, a signatures page, and a final report where we would put in our answers and read the solution. And the database has various sections for name, file, questioning, and other. And it's all, we only go here when we're told we've got some information. So in this case, it tells us, the introduction tells us to go to file 200. So we just put in file 200 and search. Okay, we've spotted a few typos in the case for which we would like to apologize. In the further reads, consider the following changes. Talk to Ben's family should be 204, not 104. Talk to the staff and guests 208, 108, 211. Okay, you can see what they've done. They've given each case a prefix. So chapter 2 are all the 200 cards. So maybe while testing it, they weren't doing that. So it's just, we're just using the 200 cards. That's all. In addition, consider the following changes for cards. 222, ignore a flip symbol. It should not be there. 223, use the card as if it had a flip symbol. Okay. Prepare your notebooks and pencils. Get some good coffee. Get to work. Fair enough. That's not too bad. All right, so that's our case. Let's get our space out. We've got Ben, we've got our time tracker. This is who we are. We don't need that. It serves no purpose. Here are the cards for the case. I believe the rules say that every case has 43 cards, and we're not going to see them all. It is interesting that they somehow have settled on a formula that there's always 43 cards. I don't know why that would be. That seems very artificial. More portraits, we'll bring those out as we need them. And maybe we should take some notes about who's who, because we aren't given portraits for all the people yet. So we've got Ben. These are victim. Then we've got John, who's Ben's son. And then we had the wife, Angelina. No, Angelina is the sister of the wife, who's Beatrice. And then we have Beatrice, wife. Then we have a butler who's unnamed. And then we have some security guard. Security, I guess he's guard, whatever he is. He does security for the house. Is that everyone? No, we've got one more. At least one more, which is Maureen Doomstick. And who is she? Maureen Doomstick. Sorry, I should be looking this way. Maureen Doomstick. We know she's not part of the household. But what is she? I thought we were told somewhere what she... Okay, I'm not sure what she does. Maybe I'm forgetting. All right, there's our suspect. And that's all we need to know for now. Now, remember that the key part of this game, the key decision mechanic here, is that we only have 14 turns. Each turn takes an hour. So every place we go, there are 43 cards. We're not going to see big chunks of these. So we have to make smart decisions about where to go. These are the only 3 places we can go at the start, though. Ben's family, the staff and guests, or the chief of security, who sounded like he just woke up from a nap. I feel like we need to familiarize ourselves with the people here, if nothing else. Probably the family is the one mostly of suspicion, including the son. So I think we should start there. 104, which is really 204. So actually, before I get this card, because you're now entering the part of the game that is going to be full of spoilers. If you think you might want to play this game yourself, you shouldn't watch this playthrough. Once you watch this playthrough, this is not really a game that you play through multiple times. Once you know the story and the solution, that's it. You'll never play this case again. So if this does look like something up your alley that you want to purchase and play yourself, you should stop watching now. You can come back and watch this video after you yourself play and see how you did compared to us. And maybe we'll take our first early break here. For those of you who are going to stick around and join me for the playthrough, I'll see you in 8 minutes. Okay, we're back. Lauren Buddha Bell was saying in the channel, you're not going to talk to the people at the scene of the crime, you're going to talk to the family, but they're really the same thing. It's just saying, like, at this gathering, it's splitting up the three groups of people who were there. We've got the family members who were there, the staff and guests who were there, and the chief of security who's there and arrived late. But I want to hear about this cursed thing from Ben. So let's start by talking to the family that were there, 204. Now let's see if this tells us to advance the clock or we just have to know it. Let me see if this works for us here. The family of the deceased is still in shock, but you know your chances of determining the cause of his death grow fainter with every minute that passes. Beatrice Hampton, Ben's wife, and her sister, Angelina Kemet, are seated near the fireplace. John Hampton, his son, is pacing around the room. The butler informs everyone no calls can be made. The storm has cut off all contact with the outside world. Besides, the nearest hospital is many hours from the remote estate. The only thing to do in this situation is to wait until morning and hope the weather improves. First my Arthur, and now poor Ben, Angelina sobs, putting her hand on Beatrice's shoulder. I won't be long for this world either, Beatrice answers, surprisingly calm for someone who has just witnessed her husband's agonizing death. John Hampton attempts for the umpteenth time to get a signal on his cell phone. He bursts into grim laughter. Perhaps these documents truly are cursed. John, stop your nonsense, Beatrice snaps. This is not the time for those idiotic stories. John sits on the ottoman next to the fireplace and stares into the flames. The only thing that brings me any comfort is that at least he'll be spared the sight of your dying. John, this is hardly the time to bring up your mother's condition, Angelina tells him. Pardon me, if I may, you interrupt timidly. No one pays you any mind. I would ask you, dear aunt, to please stop interfering in our private affairs. You haven't given us one moment's peace since Uncle Arthur's death. I'm sure you couldn't wait for my father to die as well, John asks, enraged. So there's the symbol. It just tells us to flip. Oh, stop this, both of you, Beatrice shouts. Have some respect for the circumstances, if not for each other. She falls into the armchair. The ever-attentive butler puts a cup of lemon balm tea on the table next to her. The press will have a field day with this, she continues weakly. I can already see the headlines. Mystery death at Hampton Heath. They'll make horrible insinuations and wonder about who will receive the inheritance. I'm certain he would rather have taken it all with him to the grave, John mutters. How can you talk about money now? Angelina asks. John turns to her abruptly. How dare you pretend that you don't care about the inheritance? Uncle Arthur's fortune will hardly be sufficient to provide for your retirement. Angelina's face is contorted with anger. John, that's quite enough, his mother scolds. You feel like you've had enough as well. You interrupt again, louder this time. I would kindly request that you talk to me one-on-one before your recriminations escalate any further. Gladly, John answers. It's clear from their furious faces all agree. They each leave by a different door, doing their best to avoid looking at each other. Gain portraits 8, 9, and 11. And now we have additional leads we can follow up at our convenience. We don't have to make those decisions now. Let's see what we've got here. It says portraits 8, 9, and 11. So one of these is the wife and one is the sister. Probably that's the wife. They've got matching gold. That's probably the sister. And here is John, the son. Well, if you were doing a family tree, it would look something like that. All right, just to give us faces to go with the voices. So these leads stay out. The game hasn't told us to advance time, but we know we are supposed to advance an hour for each lead we read. In the regular game, you would be careful to put these cards on the left and right side, depending on whether you've paid to look at both sides. In this case, well, I guess in this case, we may have some of that too. So let me just make sure I'm following the correct rule about left and right side. Not that it really matters, but I don't want to give you guys bad habits. When you dig deeper, put the card on the left side, you have access to both sides of it. Okay, so on the left, if you have access to both sides of the cards, sometimes we'll have a decision to make and we won't want to take the time to look at both sides. And then from then on, we'll never be able to look at the other side. But let's just work that for now. All right, so we could interview Beatrice, Angelina, and John. Or the butler. Or we could continue going down this list and talk to the staff and guests. I feel like it might be important for us to know who we're dealing with. So maybe talk to the staff to make sure we have a complete list of people and get their portraits out. So I'm going to go talk to the staff and guests, which is 208. In the staff quarters, the silence is upset only by the heavy rain rumbling against the old windows. The phone lines are down, the butler sighs, putting down the phone. I haven't seen such a storm in 20 years. Besides, who is there to call? Mr. Hampton is beyond medical help. Today's the anniversary of Hampton's father's death, the chauffeur adds, dabbing at his eyes with his sleeve. The family must be cursed, really. Was he poisoned? One of the maids asks in a dramatic whisper. Everyone turns to look at the cook. What's this? The elderly woman snaps. You ungrateful scoundrels! I've been in that kitchen for 50 years, and no one has gotten so much as an upset stomach in all that time. I think that conservator, Laureen Doomstick, has something suspicious about her. Before she can elaborate, a door opens and a slim man in his 20s, wearing a long duster and a flat cap, enters. He leans nonchalantly against the door frame. Everyone stares at him curiously. Let's analyze the facts in a rational fashion, he says after a dramatic pause. You exchange confused looks with the rest of those assembled. Sounds like we got another detective here or something. I think I know you, the maid says. The man turns slowly to show off his profile. Yes, you've probably seen me before. He smiles mysteriously and approaches to shake your hand. Sam Collins, actor. You'll soon all know me as Detective Daniel Everly in the Rebellious Detective series. No, the maid interrupts. There was a fellow who came here a few days ago. Said someone had sent him to repair beams in the attic. He looked just like you. Very slim, but he had a funny mustache and a checked shirt. The door opens once again. This time it's a man in a soaked gardener's uniform holding a bag in his hand. I found a stranger nosing about the woods. Thought it might be a burglar, so I seized him and locked him in the shed. Ignoring the maid's disgusted stare, the gardener throws a muddy bag on the ground. He had this with him. You won't believe what's inside. Curious, you peek into the bag. It contains photography gear, an expired press ID badge for Ronald Timber, and printouts from an internet forum with the detailed instructions on how to cut an automobile's brake line. From the murmured reactions of the staff, you understand that this is not their first run-in with Ronald Timber. Kane Portrait 14. Add SM47324 to the database. So that's a signature, I guess. All right, well, boy, our cast of characters is larger than I expected. For some reason, we don't get portraits of them, just this guy. So we've got Sam Collins, the actor who's playing Detective Daniel Everly. But the maid is seeming to suggest that maybe he showed up a few days ago to get access to the attic. So did this guy disguise himself in order to get access to the attic? Question mark. But then we've got other people. Boy, we've got like a gardener. I guess unless I have reason to believe that any of these people are involved, I'm not going to worry about these unnamed people. But we are told about someone they know, Ronald Timber. Who we think is probably here, Portrait 14, or is this Sam? Door opens, a slim man wearing a long duster and a flat cap. Okay, so this is Sam Collins, who's number 14. Okay, this is our actor who may have showed up yesterday. But then Ronald Timber, he's playing as a detective. Ronald Timber is photography gear guy. He's got photography gear. He's got an expired press ID badge. So he used to be press. Now he's like freelance maybe. And then instructions on cutting the brake line, whatever that's about. And on the first part of that, we got a little bit of confirmation about who Maureen is. Maureen Doomstick is the conservator. And the maid says that she's suspicious. Doesn't elaborate, though. Okay, now before we move on, I guess we're going to advance the clock and do this thing. Put in SM. So let's see. I believe SM means signature. Let's see if I can get a little reminder about it. Signature. Yes. Okay. So there's a couple classes of signature data. We can get DNA. We can get material, which is SM. So I guess we've got information about this bag or portrait or expired ID or something. So we're going to go to the signatures page. Is that work for us? Yes, we're going to go to the signature page. And I think we put in here the full thing, SM colon 47324 47324, and we could put a comment here for our own memory. I'm hesitant to do this before I see that it accepts it. Oh, let's try this. What happens? Not found. Okay, didn't like that. Let's make sure I'm typing it in right. 47324. So it's either that it wants this in caps or it doesn't want this SM at all. Let's try it this way first. No, okay, maybe it just doesn't want the SM part, just wants the number. Probably I should get my keyboard out. Okay, so that's what it wanted. Instructions for cutting brake lines printed from an internet forum. So it just wants the number. So we've gained this information now. Can we read it? No. We can't actually do anything with it. Okay. But, well, that's weird. All right. Well, we've now got more leads. The three people that this card lets us talk to is Maureen, the suspicious conservator, Sam Collins, the actor playing detective, and Ronald Timber, who's locked in the garden shed. Or the entries from the previous card. Any thoughts about who you'd like to talk to most? Maybe we put a token here so we remember. Maybe I can put this. No, doesn't matter. Kind of thinking maybe I could put it somewhere where you could see it better. Even when there's a card, how about that? All right, let's see. What do people feel like? Who are you most interested in hearing from? Remember, we may not be able to talk to all these people. Something going on here more devious than we expected. There's clearly a talk of inheritance, which would make the son the primary suspect. And then Angelina, the sister, her husband recently died. Like, is she off murdering people? I'd like to know how her husband died. Butler seems to know everyone. But then there's also these two. Don't forget, we also have the chief of security, who's not on this list. So that's the other lead we have. Let me keep a card of them so we don't. So head of security is also on this list. I mean, the head of security might know about threats to the family. The son said something about the curse, so I'm sort of curious about him. Feels like maybe the reporter guy is not involved in all this. Like, he's too tempting. The family knows him, so obviously he's trying to get some story, but he might know about something. He might know the scuttlebutt. All right, let's talk to the son first, since I'm skeptical of. I want to know what he says about this curse and stuff. All right. Here's 209. I guess as soon as I get a card, I'm going to advance this. You guys, although if we've got 3 cards, we know we've done 3, so maybe it's not so hard to keep track of. You meet John Hampton in a small wood-paneled smoking room. This is the only spot in the house where I can have some privacy, he says, closing the door behind you. Sometimes it's good to be the only smoker in the family. The son of Ben Hampton is a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 40s with dark circles under his eyes. There he is. Guess there's no good way for me to show them both. Okay, there we go. He sits in a leather armchair with a groan. I apologize for the delay, but that idiot Collins wanted to interrogate me about the so-called murder of my father. He's an actor, here to consult with my father on an absurd TV series. He takes his role a bit too seriously, if you ask me. Anyway, don't mind him. John offers you a cigarette, then lights his with an expensive lighter. He stares for a few minutes at the family portrait on the wall. Angelina has often complained that the only picture of her in this estate hangs in the smoking room, he says, apropos of nothing. She pretends to make light of it, but I know she would have given anything to be an accepted part of the household. Anyway, she should be more grateful for the one portrait. You won't find a photo of my fiancée anywhere in the manor, not even in photo albums. He takes a long pull on his cigarette. Many years ago, after a bit too much brandy, I had a nasty argument with my father, John says at last. He told me that when he dies, my share of the inheritance would be given to Angelina. He didn't remember saying it the next day, but I know Angelina heard him. Her husband died recently, leaving her alone and penniless. Not that she was sad he died, mind you. She's lived with us since then. I think that father and I were close to reconciling. Angelina must have known that and must have been worried he would reinstate me in his will. Not that he had ever removed me in the first place. I think she must have felt that our reconciliation would threaten her place in this household and her financial future. You believe that your aunt murdered your father, you ask? Either Angelina hastened his departure from this world, or the family legend about the poisoned papers is true. What is this family legend, precisely? It's an old story. John waves dismissively, and I'm a bit tired of telling it. I gave an interview to Odd Stories and Phenomena's magazine on the topic, he adds with some measure of pride. I believe you can find the issue in question in the library if you're interested. Okay, ask about Angelina's husband and read John's interview about the family legend. So if we were curious how Angelina's husband died, we could ask him maybe about that. Or we could read about the curse here. I mean, it does say poisoned letters, so that does seem relevant to our case, but is it more likely that someone also read that article and is decided to make his death look like that? Or is there something to it? Like, were those documents poisoned a long time ago and he's just, for the first time, put it to his mouth? It's not just a generic curse. It's not just a generic curse. It seems to be a legend about he says, you think your aunt did it? He said, either my aunt or the legend about poison papers. I mean, that seems very relevant for us. The butler would know who had access, and the fact that our guy has a key, it sounds like we should try to find out who would have had access to that room, or does he have the only key? Who else has a key? That's a great question. The butler might know who had access to the key, or the security guy. Um, let's actually follow up on that. So I'm curious to hear about the legend, but I think the idea of finding out who had access to the documents is more important. And I feel like maybe the butler would know that. Butler or security guard, I'm not sure which, but the butler seemed like he was sleeping on the guard, sleeping on the job. Let's talk to the butler. Let's see. Butler should know who has keys to what. More than the security guard. Security guard could know who's threatening the family. All right, I'm going to talk to the butler. That means I have to advance the clock once more. Here we go. You ask the butler, Mr. Platt, for a private chat. He's busy, much like the rest of the devastated household staff, but he drops what he's doing and leads you to one of the utility rooms. Oh, we've been so absorbed by the preparations for this event that we've had very little time to look into every recent odd incident. But I do remember a few days ago an antique shotgun disappeared from the parlor. Perhaps the conservator has taken it somewhere to examine it, or Mr. Hampton has arranged for its exhibition. He really should have informed me if that was the case, but he was quite forgetful. On October 4th, we threw a modest birthday celebration for Mrs. Hampton. It was very private. The only guests were the young Mr. Hampton and Mrs. Kemet. I recall at one point that evening the fire alarm was raised. Mrs. Hampton panicked because, while everyone else in the family had evacuated the manor, Mr. Hampton was still in the library, absorbed in his reading. We nearly had to force him out in the end. The younger Mr. Hampton bravely returned for the dog. That old mongrel was nearly too fat to move and deaf. I believe young Mr. Hampton is the only person strong enough to pick him up. Thankfully, it was a false alarm and no one was hurt. The door to the smoking room may not have been closed properly. There's a gun that's gone missing, an antique shotgun. Why that's relevant to us, I don't know. And then, at this party on October 4th, Mr. Hampton was still in the library, absorbed in his reading. So when it says Mr. Hampton, they mean the father, Ben, or the son, John? Now then it says the younger Mr. Hampton bravely returned for the dog. So that is the son, John Hampton, they're talking about. So how do you read this? Is it saying that the father was stuck in the library and the son came back for the dog? And then it says the door to the smoking room may not have been closed properly. That's where the son was sitting when we talked to him. We should say this wasn't originally written in English. Portal Games is a Polish company. Translation seems fine so far, but it is a little ambiguous about what he's talking about. So first he says the smoking room door may not have been closed, and then he says 2 or 3 days later, a suspicious individual was caught trespassing in the manor. He introduced himself as someone who had been hired to repair some wooden beams in the attic. The estate is a historic property, and we sometimes get overzealous visitors. So we were told that looks just like this guy, the actor. Speaking of strange visitors, someone called a few days ago about mowing the estate lawn. He asked when Mr. Hampton strolled around the lawn as he did not want to run him over with the mower. It was absurd. We have our own gardener. Do not commission outsiders to perform yard maintenance. I expect it was a bored rascal with too much time on their hands. I informed Mr. Hampton about all these events, but since Mrs. Hampton took ill, he's left the management of such trivial issues to the chief of security. The only thing able to relieve his misery has been the thought of tonight's yearly celebration. I hope Mrs. Hampton will live at least long enough to witness the birth of their first grandchild. John and his fiancée are expecting the baby in a few months. This is the second time we've heard about the fiancée, but not seen her. So mention of scoundrels, rascals on their outside. Is someone deliberately leaving open the door? Has someone caused this fire alarm? All right. Chief of Security is in charge of all these kinds of things. Trivial issues to the Chief of Security. Didn't mention who had a key to the room. Jamie thinks the comment about the smoking room being left open is that's what triggered the smoke. Is that what it's saying? It was a false alarm. The door to the smoking room may not have been closed properly. Okay, so that's a very observant. I hadn't made that connection. So you think he's saying the reason the smoke alarm went off is because someone was smoking in the smoking room. It's the only room where you can smoke. Okay. The dog is deaf, and only the son can pick him up. All right. Well, we're running out of time. Shall we talk to the security guy? Or we could talk to the detective, see if this guy has any theories. I feel like I'm still curious to understand the keys and stuff. So I guess I'd be inclined to talk to the security guard. Boy, we are really not going to be able to go to too many places here. But someone had to have access to the library to poison this stuff. So either it's the legend or someone got access into the library. So for me, I need to know who can get into the library. So let's talk to security on the off chance that he knows. Hampton's estate chief of security, Martin Wesley. So we learned about a couple of people's names. We learned about the butler's name? Yes, Mr. Platt. In case it comes up. Okay, the Hampton Estates Chief of Security, Martin Wesley, leads you to his office. Unfortunately, there's a power outage, so you'll be unable to see the security camera footage until it's restored. Perhaps the butler knows something. He always has his ear to the ground, Martin tells you, pointing an electric torch at a floor plan of the mansion. On the ground floor, there are utility rooms, kitchen, the staff room, the dining room, the parlor, the front room, the smoking room, and guest rooms. On the first floor, there are the Hamptons' bedroom, Mr. Hampton's study, his library, and an entrance to the attic. Access to this floor is restricted to Mr. and Mrs. Hampton. Because bollocks. One of the maids is standing at the door holding a tray with a plate of biscuits and a teapot. Okay, so access to the attic, though, from the first floor where things are secure. If they want to keep that floor private, they had better advise their guests. I constantly have to warn people off that floor, she says. Mr. John is frequently there. The conservator that arrived the day before last was there, claiming she wanted to see the entire house. 4 days ago, I had to chase off a strange man who wanted me to believe he had been sent to look at the decayed beams in the attic. He claimed the rats might have eaten through them. What nonsense. There's one person I haven't seen up there. It's you, Martin. She turns her anger towards the chief of security, whose face is a deep red. If you were to do what you are paid to do instead of sleeping away the day, I wouldn't have to do your job in addition to mine. She puts the tray down abruptly and leaves the room, muttering under her breath. Martin looks abashed. About the conservator, he says, scratching his balding head. She was in this office yesterday. She burst in without knocking, demanded the key to the library. When I told her that Mr. Hampton had the only key, she was furious. Is the library always locked? Always. No one but Mr. Hampton had a key. Neither I nor the butler had access. Who did this conservator think she was to demand that right? Particularly in the light of what I had seen earlier that day on the CCTV. Mr. Hampton clearly barring her entry to the library. The nerve of that woman. Was there not a significant number of antique things in the other parts of the house to keep her occupied? And then we can ask the butler about recent incidents that this guy says, hey, the butler may know about some stuff. I mean, we already talked to the butler, but let's just talk to him a little bit more. So this security guard is not on top of things. However, he does say that this woman wanted to get into the library, but she couldn't because he blocked her. And he's got the only key. And then we get another mention of this guy sort of sneaking in, pretending to be looking at the attics, which could be this guy, the actor, pretending to be someone who's allowed to check up in the attic. But even if you could get up in the attic, how do you get into the library without the key? Mr. Hampton had the only key. Mr. Hampton had the only key. I don't think we advanced the clock. Start at 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because we've got 5 cards. That's the butler about. It feels like we already talked to the butler. I'm not sure why we should have to talk to the butler more. Perhaps the butler knows something. He always has his ear to the ground, but we talked to the butler. Why should we have to talk to them again? I think I need to hear about this legend. I feel like it's too close to our case that we need to know about it. So I'm going to read his interview about the family legend 218. Going to take 218. And then I'm going to advance the clock. Everything in the library is meticulously organized, so you have no problem finding the article you're looking for from the latest issue of Odd Stories and Phenomenons. The interview with John Hampton starts with a full-page photograph of him. Is it true your family's cursed? Well, there are family legends about poisoned documents which, over the generations, have caused the death of anyone who dared read them. My great-great-grandfather, great-grandmother, and great-grandmother's cousin fell victim to the poisoned papers. Is it a curse or simply coincidence? There is, of course, a logical explanation for everything in this world, so I would not rule out the possibility that some old documents written with a poisonous ink might lurk in our family archives somewhere. All right, no flipping of the card. That's it. There should be nothing on the back of this, which there isn't. But we do have a new further read if we want to examine the library more thoroughly, which surely we want to do, because what we're really looking for is evidence that someone could have gotten in here without a key, like maybe through the attic from the ceiling, or a hidden door, or evidence someone's tampered with something. So let's do this. Let's examine the library more thoroughly. I mean, the library is where we think all this must have happened. Okay, so I'm going to advance the clock. And we're going to look in the library for more information. The library is spotless and perfectly organized. An antique writing desk with locked drawers sits at its center. Along the walls, books are segregated thematically. Clippings and papers are filed cataloged and indexed, and periodicals are bound. There are no decorations on the walls or shelves. There's no trash bin. It's hard to be thorough when armed with only a flashlight, but nothing seems out of place. Remember, the power's gone out. You step back and try to look at the whole room at once and notice that one of the bookshelves is pushed a little bit closer to the wall than the others. It's very heavy. You need a lot of strength to move it. Together with the butler, you push it aside, carefully trying not to shake off all the valuable tomes. You look behind the bookshelf and find a plastic bag, inside of which are a pair of latex gloves, size large, and a bottle with an eyedropper containing a clear liquid. The label reads prussic acid. You know from toxicology reports that this is a hydrogen cyanide, which is highly toxic and can be absorbed through the skin. Apparently, someone was in too much of a hurry to hide all the evidence. Okay, so this is great for us. We can now discount the idea that this is old ink that was in the ancestors' documents that ended up killing one. We clearly have a murder here. This is our murderer as planted here. Now, did you notice anything else in that dialogue that we just read? Anything jump out at you there? Because something sure jumped out at me based on the cards we've read recently. We're told that John went and saved the dog, and he's the only one strong enough to carry the dog out. And yet, and here we're told about this bookcase was very heavy, needed two people, two normal people. So that sort of implicates the son. He would have had to get into this room, though. And then there's a latex glove. Did we hear about a latex glove somewhere else? What did we hear about a latex glove by the guy they caught in the garden? Let me just see if we can look at that for a second. We found a stranger nosing about the grounds. Might be a burglar. He got locked in, and he throws a muddy bag. In the bag is photography, press pass, instructions on how to cut a brake line, no glove. I thought we might have heard something about a glove, but maybe not. All right, so let's put this thing into the database first. Four seven three two five 47325. Cyanide found in a plastic bag behind the bookshelf in the library, along with a pair of latex gloves, size large. And the pair was found, so it's not like one is left somewhere else. Okay, that's pretty interesting here. I noticed that it's, oh no, it did say large here. So the son is very suspicious now because he's spreading the rumor in the recent interview that, hey, some old ink could be the cause of poison. He's almost like he's setting up this murder so that he won't be suspected. So I think we should focus in on the son. Now, I want to see if he might be working. Could he be working with this guy? Who is the the son, there's the son's interview. And then we examine the library. But I want to see, he's close to reconciling. So his father was taking him out of the will. I mean, that would be a reason you wouldn't kill him if you thought you weren't in the will. But if you figured out you were in the will, then you might kill him. Surely you wouldn't kill him unless you were sure you were in the will, though. I want to see what he said about the actor. He's trying to put the blame on Angelina. Okay, so here's what he says about the actor. That idiot Collins wanted to interrogate me about the so-called murder of my father. He's an actor here to consult with my father about an absurd TV series. He takes his role too seriously. I'm very curious about this actor and this TV series. We haven't seen a single case of the dig deeper mechanic where you have to decide now. So we don't have to go through the locked writing desk now. But do we want to? I guess it's kind of important for us to find out if he's back in the will. Because we need motive. So we're looking for a will that puts the kid back in it, whether that's a forged will or a real will. That seems critical for us. So I think we got to do this. 223. 223 was one of our erotic cards. So we'll do that in a second. But let's go ahead and advance the clock. All right, let's see what we got here. The centerpiece of the library is an antique writing desk with lockable drawers. A quick pull on the drawer knob reveals it's not locked. Inside, you find elegant, neatly organized journals. Each one has a year engraved on the spine. You're startled by the butler, who seems unhappy to find you going through his employer's private journals. Some of the journals were stolen 4 years ago, but they were returned soon thereafter. A former employee snuck them off the estate and provided them to the journalist Ronald Timber. The employee was caught with the journals when he tried to return them. Unfortunately, Timber had already made copies. Some of the pages are marked with red sticky notes. On one of them reads, December 10, 2015, Ronald Timber is spreading falsehoods in the tabloids. Ensure he's blacklisted from all UK media. 2015, 4 years ago. All right, I believe our errata said there's supposed to be a symbol telling us to flip this and read the other side. January 15, 1976, H was caught trying to force her way into the estate once again. Though I've made it more than clear she is not welcome here. She brought her daughter with her this time. The child is not yet 2, and she already has her mother's luxuriant blonde hair. She's trying to extort money for herself and her child. I've refused to capitulate to her demands and reminded her that I have the best barristers in the country. My reputation has already suffered enough. I have matured sufficiently to realize that Beatrice is the woman of my life. I want nothing more to do with H. So we've got some woman they had an affair with. In 1976, could that end up being the mother of John? Could John's mother be this affair woman? Do we know his age? We can see how old he is. 2019, 1976 would be 24, 34, 43 years ago. That would match up with John's age. So is it possible that John is the illegitimate son of this woman, H, and that he blames his father for his something happening to his mother? Let's keep going. Her daughter. I've lost my patience with John. He told me today he has proposed to his Asian woman. What was he thinking? Where is his regard for our family's status? The girl is common, fails to address me with the proper respect. She has stubborn and misguided ideas about class, refuses to acknowledge the difference in our status. John tells me Kasumi will complete her medical degree in England. I will ensure no hospital or private practice in the area accepts to work with her. I've also told John that he would lose his inheritance if he married her. I know this matter is very important to him, and I could see the pain it caused him to hear it. Good. He told me he would marry her sooner or later over my dead body. Okay. So, more motive for John. But he did already marry her. But this guy's just threatening to remove him. He hasn't actually removed him. The father does not like his fiancée. Now, maybe they didn't get married. Okay, maybe she's just the fiancée. He wants to marry her, and he can't because the father is going to disown him if he marries her. If he married her. So there we go. Now we've got a very good motive. He's not been removed from the will, but he's been told that he will be removed from the will if he marries her. And let's read where he says about the photos of my fiancée. He says the sister complained the only portrait of her, but I know she would be, anyway, she should be grateful. You won't find a photo of my fiancée anywhere, not even in the photo albums. Okay, so that's great for us. We've got a good, strong motive now. John has a fiancée. He can't marry her because if he does, he'll be removed from the will. So he has to kill his father now, then he can marry her. And if we want to, we could examine the library even more thoroughly. I'm not sure what we hope to find there, but it is an important scene. Like, we still have a problem with how does he get access to this room, John, if that's what we think has happened. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we are on schedule. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more cards we're going to be allowed to see. When we get to this card, you can see it says recap, which is its way of saying it wants all players to discuss the case. So we can discuss the case, but we have our number one suspect. We have our number one suspect, and it seems like maybe everything else is red herring. So how do we catch our suspect? We don't really have time to find another suspect. So I think maybe if you have a choice between checking out the other suspects and getting evidence of our main suspect, I would favor going with our gut and try to get evidence against him. The assignment we have is determine if he's murdered, and if so, by whom and what was the motive. So we actually have all three of those now. We think if push comes to shove, he was murdered by his son. The motive was to kill his father while he's still in the will so that he can marry his fiancée. And that's the end of those three questions. So if we had to, we could guess at them right now. But there are unspecified questions that we don't know the answer to. It's not specified here, but what we don't know is how he got into the library. But it may have been that he started the fire, smoke alarm, and hoped to get in there. Now, his wife also works at a hospital, is a medical person. So I think maybe he could have gotten access to the cyanide through his fiancée, not wife, fiancée. He says here, you know from toxicology reports is hydrogen cyanide. So I wonder if he didn't get this from his fiancée. Okay, so I see something else interesting too. Both of these cards let you look at the library more thoroughly, but they're cards we've already seen. So we just got this new card out, and it seemed like we were saying, should we search more thoroughly now again? But really, we already have this card, so there's no more thoroughly to search. So we've gone through the writing desk and we've searched the library. So actually, these cards are done. There's no more to look, no deeper to dig here with these cards. Although we could ask the waiter about the suspicious stuff. All right, so not the waiter, the butler. Let's see what the chat has to say. Why is there an actor in the story? The actor is doing some weird stuff. Alex said, a note for localization. Asian has a different meaning in British than in American English. Does it? What's the difference? I don't think it doesn't seem relevant for this story. For this story, he's just being a bit of a racist. So the son doesn't respect the father much, I think, is the conclusion. It gives him better motive to kill the father. So actually, I want to show you that same thing that I just noticed with the two different cards that gave us access to the library. These are the same things, actually. Talking to the butler is the same as this lead about talking to the butler about recent suspicious stuff. So actually, we've already done that. So this card is actually done. Although we might want to revisit that comment about the butler. Is it possible that the son was working with someone as help? John and his fiancée are expecting a baby. That's why they have to get married. So this is the time pressure that he's under now, the son. Like, the wife is expecting, they need to get married before that baby is born. So he's got to kill his father off before his father is going to remove him from the will. So, boy, I feel even more strongly now that we've got our guy and we've got his motive. So what we know is he's about to marry and thereafter lose inheritance. So the question now is, can we get more evidence about how he got into the library? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll check in with the chat, see if any of our leads here sound like they could give us a little more insight. I'll see you in 8 minutes. You are watching Co-op for Two. We are little more than halfway through. Well, quite a bit more than halfway through the allocated time to solve this case, but I feel at this point we actually have a very convincing suspect, motive, opportunity. I do think we're ready to solve this case. But that's not how this game works. You don't try to solve it early. So we're going to have 5 more leads to read. I am going to check in with the chat, but before I do want to revisit the card that told us about the fire, because I think it does actually, when you take it all in context, it does suggest exactly when the son did this. So the son likes to smoke. He's the only one that smokes, so he would have been in the smoking room. It sounds like someone left the smoking room door open, which set off the fire alarm. Now, here was the part we already noticed, that it said the son, the strong one, who's the only one who could lift up this heavy thing, went back in to save the dog. But I think what we might have glossed over because it was so ambiguously worded is this suggestion that the father actually was evacuated from the library and may have left it open. So look what it says. Mrs. Hampton panicked because while everyone else in the family had evacuated, Mr. Hampton was still in the library, absorbed in his reading. We nearly had to force him out in the end. I think that's implying that perhaps they rushed down there, grabbed him, and were like, get out, get out, get out, get out. You have to get out now. And he did leave and left the door open to the library, which is how the son got in there. I think that feels like it wraps up this whole case to me. But we have 5 more leads to go through. Let's see what the chat wants to do to nail down any loose ends. Being this easy makes it suspicious, says Jamie. Everyone's suspicious that it's too easy. Didn't the other lady's husband die recently? Then the actor, I want to know what happened to the dead husband. Also wary, as John was the one pointing in that direction. So I like this idea of saying that the son is trying to cast blame on others. He suggested that it was the ink from the old documents, and he suggested it was the sister. So I feel like the son may be trying to get us to believe it's the sister. So that would make me less likely to go for the sister. But then there's some questions about this actor who may have been in the attic. John could have used rescuing the dog as an excuse to go into the library. That's, I think, exactly what it is. That's exactly the idea. He said he had to go rescue the dog, but he really went into the library. So here's what I want to suggest we do as our last leads to track down. I think we should talk to the guy that's locked up in the garden, Sam Collins, because his note was on the library documents here. And I want to follow up on, sounds like he stole the documents and then we're trying to bring them back. So that means he would have read all the diary entries. So he may have access to some diaries that we don't. So I want to talk to him and then maybe to that actor for fun. So let's start with 202, the guy in the garden shed. The gardener brings Ronald Timber into the empty dining room. The young journalist is soaked with rainwater and shivering. You ask the butler to prepare tea and find him some blankets. Then give Ronald a few minutes to warm up. He seems more frustrated than subdued and none too eager to talk. Can you explain to me what this was doing in your bag? You ask, putting the instructions for cutting the brake lines of an automobile on the table. Have you decided to become a mechanic rather than a second-rate journalist? I wonder if he didn't find these documents on cutting the brake line and they're really John's alternate backup method of killing his father. Ronald grits his teeth but stays silent. Not too talkative for a journalist, you say. Is there nothing you want to tell me? Why is it that the staff know your name? Yeah, they know me because one of them sold me a few of Hampton's journals 4 years ago. Thanks to them, I was able to publish an expose on that hateful coffin dodger. That was a turning point in my career, not the one I'd had in mind, unfortunately. Hampton ruined my life. He had me blacklisted, made sure no one would hire me. He nearly had me jailed. That old bastard should have ended up in there himself. He sighs and wraps himself up in the blanket more tightly. I didn't kill him. I know that's what you think, but it isn't true. I know who could have done it, though. He pulls his digital camera out of his bag, searches through the stored photos, and hands it to you. You see a photo of Sam Collins, the actor whom you met earlier. The photo is shot from a fair distance away, but you can clearly see Collins standing in a window of the manor. The date on the display shows 7/10/2019. Which window is this, you ask? In the attic, on the side of the building facing the garden. Why do you think Sam would want to kill Ben Hampton? The man's a publicity hound. He wants nothing more than fame. But I believe he's desperate enough to accept notoriety. Who knows, maybe an idiot like him would even murder someone simply to appear in the news. Perhaps he simply wants to play detective. You raise your eyebrows. What? Ronald snaps. You prefer to believe cock and bull stories about poison ink and deadly documents? What stories? Some old Hampton family legend. It's nonsense, but if you want to waste your time, read John's stupid interview in Odd Stories and Phenomenons magazine. The Hamptons were obsessed with archiving every text which mentions them, so they must have a dozen copies in the library. You'd best hurry before Collins calls a full-blown press conference in the foyer. Gain Portrait 13. So there's the newspaper guy putting blame on Sam Collins. Then he says, we can look in the attic. We can read John's interview about the family legend. We already read that. We can read Ben's journals. We already read that. But we haven't examined the attic, where we think this guy pretended to be someone looking at the beams. We don't know why, though. So I do feel like that's the next direction to go, even though I think it's very clear that we've found our suspect. So I'm inclined to start pulling on this lead now. This guy gave us more information that the patriarch of the family is a bastard that deserves, that the son it would be natural that he would hate. I did have a second thought, though, but before I do, let me remind you that the game rules say that when we get to here, we should have a discussion of our theory. Let's take a look at what those game rules are. I'm a fan of this thing, this idea that you should discuss the case while you're playing. I'm curious to remind myself of what the game actually says about it. It says, you don't have enough time, you're going to have to guess at the end. Here are the rules about when you get to the recap hour. You must do a final brainstorm. Each player states what they think the solution is and why they believe it to be true. What evidence do you have, etc. So that's it. It's just an informal time to discuss it, but I think I believe we're all in pretty much agreement that the son did it, and his motive is because his father is going to disinherit him when he married his fiancée, which he's about to do because she's pregnant. Now, does anyone disagree with that theory? I know some of you are afraid it's too easy, too good to be true. So I'm kind of curious to hear from this guy to figure out why this guy was in the attic. However, one of the things I try to remind everyone on this channel is when we have a theory, it's useful to say, how could we disprove it and how could we get more evidence for it? And something did occur to me now. The way we've got opportunity for the sun to get in and poison the ink is we've come up with a scheme that he set off a smoke detector alarm. Everyone left. This guy was pushed out of the library, probably left it unlocked. This guy goes in, presumably to rescue the dog, but sneaks in and does the poisoning. Now, I think maybe we are underestimating, we've overlooked a way we might get confirmation about some of that. And that is because it's the wife, I believe, that tells us they had to force him out of the library when there was the fire. Or was it the butler? No, look, let's see. Okay, the butler said, the butler tells us about it. He's missing the gun. It was a birthday party for Mrs. Hampton. Only guests were the son and Mrs. Kemet, the sister. Then there was a fire alarm. Mrs. Hampton panicked because the husband was still in the library and we nearly had to force him out. So I think if this is our theory of how, when the son had the opportunity to get in there, we should talk to the wife and maybe she'll give us a little more detail about how they had to pull him out and he left the door open. So that's why, even though she otherwise seems uninteresting to us, I think we should talk to her. She was there also at this party for the wife, so she would be a secondary person to talk to. So, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow up here. I'm going to talk to Beatrice 221. I like that logical thinking that we're going to get more information about the opportunity to get into the library. The butler leads you hesitantly to the parlor where the window is resting. You hope that she will forgive a few probing questions in this most difficult moment. Mrs. Hampton is sitting in a broad leather armchair and is holding a teacup with both unsteady hands. Given the circumstances, she appears surprisingly calm. Ben was so looking forward to this evening, she says softly when you sit in the other chair. He loved his little tradition. Last week at my birthday celebration, he was telling us about the readings he had prepared. He was all very excited, though John, Angelina, and I were stifling yawns the entire time. She chuckles. To be honest, no one but him really cared about the irrelevant documents in the archives, but it kept him busy, and it was nice to see him so passionate about a project. Beatrice can barely hold the cup in her weak hands. Someone must have had a hand in Ben's death. He was perfectly healthy. I just can't believe he could just die like that. It's a pity John's fiancée, Kasumi, wasn't here this evening. She's lost in thought for a moment. He really should have been happy for them. Instead, he was planning to meet someone next week who could help him find incriminating information about her, to convince John to abandon his plans to marry her. I told him it was absurd. After all, they're expecting a baby. Maybe he was just teasing them. I just can't believe that he could be capable of destroying his son's happiness this way. Has anything happened recently you would consider suspicious, you ask? Unfortunately, I've been spending more time with doctors than at home recently. There is one thing that bothers me. Mrs. Doomstick, the conservator. One would think she would be more interested in the matter than in our family history. She asked Ben probing questions about his youth and pestered him to let her access his private library. I'm certain she would turn it inside out if anyone let her. She sighs and stares into the flames of the fireplace. You can sense she's growing uncomfortable with this interview. Okay, so we could ask about the fiancé. We could ask about Ben's past. I don't see how the past helps us. Fiancé might tell us she has access to toxic poisons. But she's not even in town. So I'm not sure that helps us. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so we're down to 4. All right, so she didn't talk about the fire, which is unfortunate, but the sister was also the other person there. There was something else. There was something else that's very important about that last card we read, and it doesn't sound like the chat picked up on it. Okay, so I think Jamie says, I think we found the door. Okay, that's let me not pull on that thread yet. I don't think so, but there was something we read there that was very important, a big clue. And I don't think the chat picked up on it. Does anyone want to guess what I'm thinking? Let me put the card back up for you to consider. Okay. The conservator was in the library. No, that's not right. We heard that she was trying to get in. The conservator is the missing daughter. That's an interesting idea. I think that's an interesting idea, but I don't think that helps us solve our case. However, there is something here that does. There's something here that rules out the conservator. The doctors and the medicine? Nope, that's not what I'm thinking. The clue I have for you is that this exonerates the conservator. What do you see in this card that's relevant for us? It's actually very important. Let me put this up with the chat. Okay, there's something here. It's a little subtle, but I think it's hugely important. Let's see if you can figure it out. Ben was about to talk with someone to get incriminating evidence on Kasumi. No, I don't think that's really important for us. We already know he was going to try to disinherit and didn't like the fiancé. So I don't think that's new information that's useful to us. Are you referring to the readings? Yes, I am. Yes, I absolutely am. Why is that so significant? She was looking and desired to look for something. Nope, that's not it. Fake Alex Blue is on the right path. Beatrice, Andrew, and John weren't interested in the papers he was planning to read. I don't think that's that important of itself. No, I would say that that's not quite what I'm talking about. I mean, it's close, but it's not that useful. If John was planning the murder, he would have wanted to have the specific papers. Well, that's basically what I'm saying, but let me say it a little differently. The murderer had to know what papers the father planned to read in order to poison those papers. The father has not told anyone what document he's going to pull out of the library and read at this event, except this tiny group of people that are at this birthday party. This is the moment where this group of people, these three people sitting in this room during the birthday party, are the only ones that know which document will be read by him. And the murderer needs to know that in order to poison them. So basically, it can't be the conservator. The conservator doesn't know what this guy plans to bring out and read, but these people do. He was telling us about the readings he had prepared. They're all pretending to be bored by it, but really one of these people, John the son, Angelina the sister, or the wife, they're the only ones that know what document was going to be read and then poisoned. So I think even more clear that the son is guilty and that it couldn't be any of these wild cards because they don't know what he's going to read at this event. But I think now, for the fun of it, we should probably talk to the sister. And the son has insinuated that she is the killer. And let's see, she might be able to give us some insight. I want one of them to tell us about the smoke fire alarm, but let's start by talking to her. I was going to investigate this guy, but I don't think we do. The only other question I wonder is if the fiance would have access to this cyanide. I wouldn't be that surprised. So I guess the two places that I'm interested in talking about is talking to Angelina to see if she can fill in any details about this birthday party and the smoke fire alarm. And then maybe if we could look at the fiance and see if she has access to toxicology. So let's start there. Let's talk to Angelina and see if she can shed some light on that birthday party and this fire alarm, or what she has to say for herself. So 216. I don't think her husband is relevant now that I'm so locked into son John. Angelina Kemet looks frail and distraught. Her eyes are swollen from crying. She's not strong enough to move the bookcase. That already gets rid of her as a possible person. But oh, poor Ben. He was so looking forward to this evening. He had spent the last few days talking with the conservator from Heritage Trust about the history of the estate and his family. Poor woman. He wouldn't let her in the library despite all her attempts. She smiles ruefully, staring at the rain striking the window. John's the only person he ever allowed to enter the library, where he kept all those precious historical papers, and then only under his supervision. Oh, Ben, to think that the poison ink struck him down as well. He was no saint, but he was so close to restoring his good reputation. Restore, you ask? There was that incident a few years back. Ben was devastated with the way the press treated him. He wanted nothing more than to restore his good name. Can you elaborate? Please don't ask me to speak ill of my brother-in-law, she snaps, minutes after his death, no less. Besides, there was much ado about nothing, the typical tabloid exaggerations I sometimes pity. Poor Ronald Timber, of course, but you have to admit he was asking for it. Ronald? Yeah, the journalist who started that whole mess in the papers. Ben ensured his career was ended. The memories are clearly troubling Angelina. Her hands shake when she raises a tissue to her nose. This is just trying to have us suspect the journalist, but I don't buy it for a minute. I understand this is hard, you say. I'm certain this must be very difficult for your sister. Beatrice? Oh, I'm certain Beatrice is doing just fine. Why is that? Angelina covers her mouth, perhaps thinking she's said too much. God, forgive me for what I'm about to say. She takes a deep breath. Beatrice and Ben had an exemplary marriage, inseparable. They took tea together every morning on their bedroom balcony, every day for 40 years. Beatrice prepared it herself. They walked on the estate, talked for hours. It was all very romantic. John's the same way. He would do anything for Kasumi, his fiancée. Ben was devastated when he learned about Beatrice's health problems. They knew they did not have much time left. He didn't know what he would do without her. I do not mean to suggest anything, but she lowers her voice dramatically. Beatrice was anxious about Ben becoming a widower. She was always a very jealous woman. The thought of him being with someone else after her death troubled her greatly. I think she'll sleep much better knowing Ben is now beyond temptation or infidelity. She shifts uneasily in the armchair, then stands up suddenly. She pulls a purse from the seat, which she had failed to notice in the dark. I believe this belongs to Mrs. Doomstick. She must have forgotten it here. All right. Well, she did not shed any light on the fire event. She does say John is allowed in the library, but only supervised, but that's fine. That just means he knows his way around there. So if he snuck in during the smoke alarm, it makes more sense that he could go through the place quickly. No one else is allowed in there. The game is trying to give us reasons to suspect everyone. She's trying to give us reasons to suspect the wife, reasons to suspect the writer, newspaper guy, but we don't buy any of it. So if we're curious about who Miss Doomstick is, if we want to follow up the idea that she might be related to the daughter of H, I think that's going to make sense. It's going to give her a motive. It's still not going to be her. But I wouldn't be surprised if she was the daughter of the woman that this guy had an affair with back in 76. And that's going to be her motive. But it's still not going to be her. Everyone's got a little bit of a motive. We don't know this guy's motive, but you can bet he's got one. Maybe just wants to learn more for his TV show. So what would you like? I think we're down here now. We've got 3 more. We don't need them, but what are there loose ends you're curious about? Do you want to go into her purse and confirm our theory? Or do you want to ask about the fiance Kasumi and see if we can't find out that she's got access to hydrogen cyanide? I think surely his motive is obvious. Okay, I don't understand that comment. But you are pointing out that he looks like Elon Musk. I guess for me, I'm sort of curious I'm always trying to track down more hard evidence. So if I'm convinced it's John, any thread that pulls at him and his fiancée is worth pulling on. So let's talk to the fiancée, 222. Why was your son's fiancée not in attendance this evening? Beatrice takes a deep breath and shakes her head. Oh, Kasumi is just not part of our social circle. John met her a long time ago when his company was still prospering during a visit to Osaka on business matters. Initially, Ben had nothing against their relationship. He thought it was just a temporary fling. When John announced that they were engaged, Ben flew into a fury. He told John if they married, he ought to forget about his inheritance. The conversation went downhill from there. Kasumi, well, she no longer wants to visit us. It's a pity. She's good for John and wise. She treats everyone as equals, no matter their status. That's probably why Ben loathed her so much. She negated his status. He retaliated by making her visits here unbearable. He teased her about her accent. He asked about her parents' wealth, knowing their only source of income was their small restaurant. He mispronounced her name, ridiculed her for every breach of table etiquette, made jokes that I don't even want to repeat. Beatrice looks down, her voice trembles. Ben was a wonderful husband, but I would be lying if I said he was also a good father. On my birthday last week, he told me that he would hire someone to probe Kasumi's life for anything unsavory, to force John to realize he should find someone equal to his social standing. I don't know whether or not he was serious, but I know John would have never forgiven him. It's a small miracle John agreed to attend tonight's soiree. Yeah, he agreed because he's going to kill him. Okay, that's it. And the rules, this was the other errata that says this shouldn't be here. So there's nothing here. All right, so we did get more confirmation that he was a terrible father and that John wouldn't normally come to this dinner, but now he's come to kill his father. So I think we've got 2 more leads we're allowed to look at. It doesn't seem like we need them. Let's look in her purse. I'm curious to see what's in the purse. All right, just for fun, I want to see if we can't confirm that she is the daughter, because that would be fun. 206. So remember, we know that the affair was with a woman named H. So what we're looking for is that this woman's last name is H. As soon as you're out of sight of the other people in the manor, you go through Laureen Doomstick's purse. You find a wallet, tissues, scattered cosmetics, and car keys. The Nissan logo on the key indicates that the old Nissan you saw parked in the garage is probably hers. Not even the polished Rolls-Royce, which Ben Hampton reserves for his exclusive use. Making sure you're alone, you go to her Nissan and look inside. The floral air freshener scent is overwhelming. You see a woman's coat thrown carelessly on the back seat, several empty stacked disposable gas station coffee cups, and several David Bowie CDs. You open the glove compartment, finding the car's registration, more CDs, and a pistol. Okay. That's kind of useless. And we got a new signature. 47327. 47327. Why does this girl love guns so much? It's the gun found in Laureen Doomstick's car. Okay, well, that's useless to us. All right, so this one was totally useless. She loves her guns. A pistol in England seems unusual. All right, so we're right about to solve the case because we've got one more clue to read. So what last clue would you guys like to read? We could ask about Ben's past. We could ask about Angelina's husband. We could talk to Sam Collins. Probably we should do that. Talk to this guy. See if we can't get one last piece of information about this one person that we don't know. 215. But let me see if anyone... We could do the attic as well. What was the attic entry? Examine the attic. Should we do that instead? Look in the attic. Okay, that's what the group wants to do. Look in the attic. 220. All right, here we go. That's it. This is our last clue. The stairs leading to the attic creak menacingly at every step. The butler treads before you, holding a candle which casts grotesque shadows on the walls. You fully expect a ghost to jump out at you. You finally reach the top of the staircase. The butler slowly opens the squeaky door. Revealing a spacious attic filled with old furniture and household items hidden under white dust sheets. Everything is covered with a thin layer of dust, which makes the many shoe prints on the floor highly visible. After a short examination, you conclude that they must belong to a single person, probably a man. You follow them carefully, trying not to bump into anything. The tracks lead you down to a small window. Its shape resembles the one you saw in the photograph taken by Ronald Timber. The dust on the floor below the window is entirely absent, as if someone had lain here. From beneath what appears to be a coffee table sticks out a long item wrapped in a blanket. You carefully unwrap it, revealing an antique shotgun. No idea why someone would think that this thing is safe to use, but it seems that Ronald Timber was right. 47328 to the database. Four, 7, 3, 2, 8. Antique shotgun. I guess it's just telling us that he stole the shotgun. I don't think this helps us at all. Okay, and that's it. That's our last clue that we're allowed to read. Let's have our last chat. Do we already have a strong link between John and the poison? We certainly don't. We have no link between John and the poison. We don't have a link between anyone and the poison. We just know that it is cyanide found in a plastic bag behind the bookshelf in the library, along with large latex gloves. But we do know it's very hard to move the bookcase. It took 2 people. And we know of everyone on our set, he's the super strong one. Why did the actor go up there? It sounds like maybe he was just trying to steal it, or he's trying to get into his role as a... We don't know enough about him to answer that question. But he snuck in the house a few days before he showed up today. He's an eccentric actor. He's involved in this TV show that they're creating. Maybe he was trying to steal that gun, or maybe he was planning some theatrical use of it. Jamie has a good theory. I bet he stole it so it would give him something to investigate as a detective. I like that idea. He makes no sense as a character in this case. I think you might have a point, but I think I like Jamie's idea that he's planted this gun so that he can find it as a pretend detective. That's a great idea, actually. Like, he's going to show up here and be like, so a gun has gone missing. Let me use my detective skills to figure it out. And he's going to go discover it and solve the case, maybe impress Ben by his detective skills, which will make him a cinch for the acting role. I think that's right. I think that's a great theory. All right, so we're ready to solve this case. Let's read again the rules for the game end. Okay, so we've spent all the time. When it goes to the last step, log into the database, choose final report, and complete our virtual report. It says you're going to have to discuss... You shouldn't expect a single card to reveal it all, but then get your score. You have to provide answers. Each case is a predetermined point total to successfully complete it and win it. You got main questions. Evidence you find will gain you points. Some have additional questions. It's very difficult to score the maximum points. You'll never have enough time to follow every lead. Don't be disheartened if your score is lower than you expected. The life of a detective is not easy. If you win, great. Otherwise, you could try again. All right, here we go. So we're going to click Final Report. You should finish your game first. Are you ready now to see and answer questions for the case? Let's see what happens. Yes. Okay, who murdered Ben Hampton? Are we all agreed that it is John Hampton? Any disagreement in the chat about this? Any disagreement? Time to speak up. Assuming not. Notice it didn't give us choice of like butler or security guard. All right. So let's move on. That's it? That's it. That was it. One question, 6 out of 6 points. That's a little anticlimactic. As you've probably deduced for yourself, the poisoned documents were not the only threat facing Ben Hampton. Nearly every guest had a good reason to help him exit this world. Let's start with Ronald Timber, who was a promising young journalist a few years ago. He made a name for himself as a shrewd investigative journalist, but his career was cut short after he wrote a slanderous article about Ben Hampton. Hampton pulled some strings and ensured no self-respecting newspaper in the country would hire him. Frustrated journalist decided to take revenge by cutting the brake lines of Hampton's prized Rolls-Royce. His plan was foiled by the Hampton's gardener, who intercepted him while patrolling the grounds of the estate. Lauren Doomstick had a difficult life. Her mother had to work hard to provide for her. Maureen knew little about her father, only that her mother had said he was a monster and not worth her time. Many years after her mother's death, Maureen stumbled across the article written by Ronald Timber. She discovered that her father was none other than Ben Hampton, who had abandoned his lover and illegitimate daughter. Maureen and her mother struggled financially while he lived in luxury. Driven by vengeance, Maureen posed as a conservatory with the Heritage Trust to gain access to Hampton. She planned to gain his trust and then kill him using the pistol hidden in her car. We had figured that out. It didn't give us a chance to guess that. That's unfortunate. That's a shame because that was one of the more subtle details. Credit to Jamie, I think it was, who was the spearhead of that theory. Angelina Kemet spent most of her life in stable but unhappy marriage with Arthur Kemet. As a young woman, she competed with her sister for Ben Hampton's attention. We didn't go down this angle. But lost. Many years later, her husband's death left her destitute, envious of the comfortable life her sister enjoyed. Embittered by years of privation, she planned to convince Ben to meet her in the arbor at midnight. There she would use a dagger to pierce the heart that a lifetime ago dared choose her sister over her. We never went down that trail. Despite a rocky beginning, Ben and Beatrice's marriage was by all accounts wonderful. Their happiness was cut short by Beatrice's sudden illness. Knowing she had no more than a few months to live, Mrs. Hampton reflected that her husband would never be and could never be allowed to be happy as a widower, and decided to help him depart the world before her. She sprinkled arsenic in the teacup he used every morning. As they sat on the balcony, it was a ritual they had performed for 40 years, on which they would perform one final time. What? Then why didn't he die of that? That's weird. I can see how you might argue she might, but that's weird. Sam Collins' acting career was not where he thought it should be. The director of Rebellious Detective was pleased with his performance. Neither the critics nor the viewers agreed, and the series was certain to be canceled. He decided to stage a mystery that he would then solve. Ensuing press coverage would be certain to revive interest in the show and his career. Unfortunately, Sam was as inept a director as he was an actor. Reading an interesting article in Odd Stories and Phenomena, as he put his poorly conceived plan into action, he gained access to the Hampton Manor by posing as a carpenter hired to fix some roof beams. There he hid an antique shotgun he found in the parlor after deciding that poison was less likely to generate headlines than shotguns. He tried to determine when Ben typically frequented the garden in hopes of firing on him from the attic window. He returned later to talk with Ben about using the manor as a setting in Rebellious Detective, and hid in a cupboard when guests started arriving. Okay, here we go. John Hampton had been butting heads with his father for years. The main point of contention was John's relationship with Kasumi, whom Ben considered to have too low a social standing. John endured his father's barbs for years in order to retain the right to his inheritance. When he discovered he would soon be a father himself, he decided he had enough. He could no longer wait for Ben's approval. On his mother's birthday, he triggered a fire alarm to lure everyone out of the house, particularly his father, who was in the library. John then ran back into the house under the pretense of rescuing the dog, snuck into the library. He knew which documents his father planned to read in the upcoming yearly event, so he poisoned them, hid the evidence behind the tall books on a bookshelf. He planned to pin the blame on his Aunt Angelina if the family legend about poison papers failed to convince the authorities. So we basically got it all right. It's too bad it didn't ask us more questions about some of these things, because it sounds like all of our little theories were correct. The only thing we didn't have insight into is it seems like other people were actually planning to murder him, one with a knife in the heart. But we locked on to our suspect very early, and we were able to chase down all the leads related to it in a way that we were very confident of our theory. But we even solved those little side stories about the conservator being the daughter. Okay, so let's take a short 3-minute break. Then we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about the experience when we get back. I don't think we'll have that much to say, but we'll spend a couple minutes talking about it. If you've joined me this far, I hope you'll stick around for the final 3-minute roundup. I'll see you in 3 minutes to talk about the case. All right, so we've solved our case. We can give ourselves our little... Absolutely not the right thing. Okay, before we talk about the case for a second, I want to address something in the chat. I wish I hadn't missed the earlier notation about characters' stress levels. Beatrice and Angelina were the only stressed people. Were we told their stress levels, and did we miss it? The game does mention stress levels, but it's normally only, I thought, on the website database interrogations. Are you saying that in one of our interviews, shaking hands, oh, that's fine, but not explicitly? There is an explicit notation for high, low, medium stress levels. I thought you were saying we missed that. All right, so it was fun, says Buddha Bell. It was a good Saturday afternoon game of We Easy, which for me is saying something. I think they should have spent more time unveiling the finale. And all, glad you played it today. Well, look, here's what I would say. I thought this was actually pretty enjoyable. My memory better than the first case we played in this box. The main disappointment here is that none of the interesting mechanics of the game are used here at all. The only thing that's used in this game is having to choose which leads to follow up on. There's no dig deeper, there's no travel mechanic, none of that. So it was oddly minimalistic. It certainly felt like an easy case, at least in answering that one question. It's sort of a shame that it didn't ask us more subtle questions, because we had figured out a whole bunch of subtle details. Like, we were right that he heard about what paper was being used at the birthday party. We were right about figuring out what the smoke alarm system was. We were even right about the two very tangential side stories about the conservator being the lost daughter, and a very brilliant idea from the chat that the motive for the shotgun was to solve this mystery, although we thought wasn't quite as deadly as it was. But I thought it was well done, and once you accept that it's just a little bit on the easy side, pretty well done and enjoyable. The only caveat is that because in this game you only can see some of the leads, it was easy, partly because we got on the right trail and were like a bloodhound about it. But you could see if you played it, if you just happened to have a different initial suspicion, like we were very suspicious of the sun right from the start, but you could see, look, here are the other cards you could have chosen. And you could imagine if you got tricked, if you made a mistake of going down a different path, where you got suspicious about other people, if you didn't go in the library and see the bookcase and find that heavy bookcase, then you could imagine at the end being unsure. To a large degree, that's a real credit to the system. If it was our brains that got us here. If it was our brains that got us to follow up all the leads of the sun, then this is a great system, because it means that our cleverness about where to focus our attention led us to be able to comfortably solve the case. Only if you looked at multiple groups could you say how much of what we chose to go down was luck. But for a simple single mechanic of choosing which subset of leads to read, it feels like this is a good mechanic. Like, the fact that we focused well is what led us to solve the case. And if we hadn't focused well and got lured down dead ends, we would have had a harder trouble. So I would say, this is probably the most successful example of this system working. Case 1 did not go so smoothly, I'm pretty sure. Is that because we played this better or we got lucky? You definitely could get unlucky, but I think this is actually a fairly good demonstration of when this system works, it works well. Like, when it's done well, the fact that there were redundant evidence to point, and if we followed the evidence and followed up on it, that's what let us solve it. Jamie says, yeah, had we been more distracted, it could have easily taken us to one of the other methods. So, yeah, Dorp says, that's what I didn't like about this box. Another case, the correct path to follow was choosing the least logical lead. Well, that's the... I wonder if the errata is an indication that this case was intended to be the first case. That's very interesting. That is an interesting theory. This does seem like it might make a good introductory case. I also like these things. Like, they're not functionally doing anything, but it's nice to give us some faces to think about. Probably it would have been helpful if they put the names, since that's not a mystery. I think it might have been a good idea. This must have been the conservator. I don't think it would kill them to put the names on these. I liked it. It's a good system. I don't think it may not be fair to call this such an easy case. You'd have to see how other groups did it, but the wisdom of forcing you to only see only a certain number of leads means if you choose poorly, you won't be able to solve it. The only real criticism I have is that it doesn't make use of all the mechanics, and the questions at the end were sad. It was sad that we didn't get tested on our ability to perceive other issues. Not a reasonable case, quite a good case. A good case. We were on to John after his outburst about the curse. We could have easily taken another path if we hadn't grasped that. What the ending epilogues about how everyone was actually planning to kill her were weird, and especially the weirdest one was the wife put arsenic in his coffee in the morning. That was very weird. Like, why is that happening? Why are we being told she put arsenic in his coffee? What does that mean? Like, why wouldn't he have gotten sick from that? And why did it feel the need to do that? I can see how she might have thought about it. All right. Well, a fun afternoon, 3 hours. That's about right. Box Time says about 1 hour to play this. We took 3. If you like the content on this channel, I would appreciate if you left a comment afterwards, or give it a thumbs up, or support this channel on Patreon. Always a pleasure to play with this group. Pleasure to meet new people. Fun stuff. It sounds like the arsenic was the most recent time in preparation for tomorrow. In preparation? She sprinkled arsenic in the teacup he used every morning as they sat on the balcony. So you're saying she poisoned the cup and it was going to be for him the next day. And Jamie points out that kicking of the papers into the flame wasn't an accident. It was him hiding the evidence. I still think my favorite part was learning at the birthday party that only a small group of people knew about the document. All right. I'll see some of you tomorrow, Sunday at 1 p.m. for Masters of Crime Rapture. For the rest of you, I'll see you next time.